I caught my sister with my boyfriend in our bed. Don't be so dramatic, she smirked. Then my parents demanded I give them my apartment and sent me a $22,450 bill for her pregnancy. I showed everyone the receipts. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name is Carolyn, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one. Growing up in a quiet, modest house in the suburbs, I was the one who set my own alarm, made my own lunch for school, and made sure my homework was done without anyone asking. My younger sister, Brenda, was my opposite. She was the sun, and I was the planet that quietly orbited her, making sure her world didn't spin out of control. My parents, well, they were the ones holding the telescope, and their gaze was always fixed on her. This dynamic was set in stone before I was even old enough to understand it. I remember one specific, searingly clear incident when I was 17. Brenda, who was 16, decided it would be a brilliant idea to take our dad's prized sedan out for a spin with her friends. She didn't have a full license, and she certainly didn't have permission. The inevitable call came around midnight. It wasn't a hospital, thank God, but it was the police. She had wrapped the front end of the car around a lamppost in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner. I was the one who went with Dad to the station. I sat on a hard plastic chair under flickering fluorescent lights while he sorted everything out. I expected fury. I expected grounding for a decade, the loss of all privileges. What happened was the opposite. After a week of mild disappointment, my parents enrolled her in an expensive defensive driving course. A few months after that, they co-signed a loan for her to get her own used car. I found my father in the garage that weekend, polishing his new bumper. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Dad," I began, my voice tight. "I don't understand. I get straight A's. I work 20 hours a week at the diner. I've never been in a shred of trouble. Why does Brenda get rewarded for being reckless?" He stopped polishing and let out that long, weary sigh he always did when he was about to deliver a line that made no sense. "Carolyn, you have to understand. Brenda is more fragile. She needs more encouragement to stay on the right path. She needs to feel our support. You're strong. You're already doing fine on your own. Doing fine on my own." It was meant as a compliment, but it felt like a punishment. It was the excuse for their neglect. It happened again, a year later. My senior prom. I had worked for months, saving every tip from the diner to buy the dress of my dreams. It was a simple, elegant navy blue gown that shimmered under the light. I had never felt beautiful before, but in that dress, I did. The night before the prom, I came home late from a shift. I walked past Brenda's room and saw a flash of navy blue on her floor. My heart stopped. I pushed the door open to find my dress crumpled in a heap, with a massive, dark stain spreading across the bodice. It smelled sickeningly sweet, like wine coolers. "What did you do?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Brenda looked up from her phone, annoyed at the interruption. "Oh, that? I borrowed it for Sarah's party. Someone bumped into me. It's not a big deal, God." It was a big deal. I broke down, sobbing. My mother's solution was to tell me to be more understanding. She gave me $100 and told me to go to the mall and find something else. I spent the morning of my prom in a sterile department store, trying on generic, ill-fitting dresses under harsh lighting, my eyes red and puffy. My parents later told me not to worry about paying them back for Brenda's mistake, but they made sure I returned the $100 they'd loaned me for the replacement. This was the rhythm of my life. I worked, I strived, I was responsible. Brenda existed, she messed up, and she was coddled. I put myself through state college, juggling classes and 2 jobs. Brenda dropped out of community college after a single semester, declaring it creatively stifling. I graduated, I got a good job in marketing with a steady salary, and I finally built a life of my own in an apartment downtown. I met Russell, a handsome, ambitious lawyer who made me feel seen and cherished. For 2 years, my life was calm. The orbit I'd been stuck in had finally been broken. I was free. I was happy. Or so I thought. That fragile piece I'd spent my entire adult life building was shattered 2 months ago by a phone call. I was in my office, staring at a spreadsheet, when my phone vibrated with Brenda's name. My first instinct was to ignore it. I knew that a call from Brenda was never just a call, it was a summons. But that old, deeply ingrained sense of duty, the one my parents had so carefully installed, made me pick up. Hello? The sound that came through the phone was a hurricane of sobs. Carolyn? Oh, God, Carolyn. I leaned back in my chair, the plastic groaning in protest. I pinched the bridge of my nose, bracing myself. What is it, Brenda? What's wrong? They fired me, she wailed. My boss, that horrible man, he fired me. He said I was 15 minutes late this morning, but it wasn't my fault. The bus was running behind, and I told him, but he just doesn't like me. He's always had it out for me. I sighed. It was the same story every time. It was never her fault. It was always the bus, the alarm clock, the unfair boss, the coworker who was jealous of her. It was a narrative so worn out, it was threadbare. Okay, Brenda, calm down. What do you need from me? The crying miraculously subsided, replaced by a small, hopeful voice. Well, my landlord is a total jerk too, and he's kicking me out at the end of the week because I'm going to be late with the rent. I was just wondering, could I maybe stay with you for a little bit? Just a few weeks, until I find another job. I promise, you'll barely even know I'm there. I looked around my quiet, organized apartment that evening, the peaceful sanctuary I shared with Russell. The thought of Brenda's chaotic energy invading the space made my stomach clench. When I brought it up with Russell, his reaction was exactly what I expected. Absolutely not, he said, not even looking up from the legal brief he was reading. Carolyn, we've been down this road before with her. Remember when she stayed for a weekend and we ended up having to pay her overdue library fines? A few weeks will turn into a permanent residence. I know, I pleaded, hating the weak, placating tone in my own voice. But she has nowhere else to go. Mom and Dad are on that cruise, remember? It's just for a little while. I'll make sure she looks for a job. I'll help her. He finally looked at me, his eyes full of a frustration I knew was justified. Fine, he sighed, rubbing his temples. 2 weeks, Carolyn. Not a day more. If she's not actively looking for a job and making progress, she's out. I mean it. 2 weeks turned into a month. A month turned into 2. Brenda's version of barely knowing I'm there was to colonize our living room with her clothes, makeup, and magazines. Her job search consisted of her scrolling through Instagram on the couch while declaring she was networking. She ate our food, used my most expensive toiletries, and contributed nothing. The atmosphere in the apartment grew thick with unspoken resentment. Russell became quiet and withdrawn, and I found myself constantly apologizing for my sister's presence, my voice taking on that same weak tone I hated. I was no longer a partner in my own home, I was a warden, a maid, and an apologist. I kept telling myself it was temporary. But I was living in a pressure cooker, and it was about to explode. That Tuesday is burned into my memory like a brand. I had a huge presentation at 2 p.m. It was for the Roberts account, a deal that could secure me a major promotion at my firm. I had been preparing for weeks. But when I woke up, I felt the familiar, sinister throb behind my right eye. A migraine. I tried to power through it, chugging coffee and taking medication, but by noon, the office lights felt like daggers, and waves of nausea were washing over me. Defeated, I went to my boss, Diane. "I'm so sorry," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't do it. The migraine is one of the worst I've ever had." Diane was a godsend. She took one look at my pale, sweating face and waved away my apologies. "Go home, Carolyn. Your health is more important. We'll reschedule for Thursday. Now get out of here and go lie down in a dark room." The drive home was agony, every sound and ray of sunlight amplifying the pain in my head. All I could think about was my bed, my blackout curtains, and blessed silence. I fumbled with my keys at the door, the simple act feeling like a monumental task. I finally got it open and stepped inside, dropping my purse and kicking off my heels. The apartment was quiet. I figured Brenda was out researching opportunities. I walked toward the bedroom, unbuttoning my blouse as I went. But as I got closer, I heard a sound. A soft, rhythmic creaking. And then a muffled giggle. My blood ran cold. It wasn't Brenda being sick. It was a sound I recognized, a sound that had no business happening in my apartment in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. My heart hammered against my ribs. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my migraine was making me imagine things. I pushed the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar, fully open. And the world ended. It wasn't a loud, fiery explosion. It was a silent, instantaneous implosion of everything I thought was real. There, in my bed, on my sheets, was my sister, Brenda, and my boyfriend, Russell. Naked. Entangled. Time stopped. The pounding in my head vanished, replaced by a deafening roar in my ears. They didn't see me at first. Then, Russell's head turned, and his eyes met mine. The color drained from his face. He looked like a terrified child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He scrambled away from Brenda, grabbing frantically for the sheet. "Carolyn! Oh, God! This isn't... It's not what it looks like." It was exactly what it looked like. Brenda, however, had a completely different reaction. She turned, saw me standing there, and showed not a flicker of shame. No guilt, no panic. She simply sat up, pulling the sheet casually over her chest with an air of profound boredom, as if I were a waiter interrupting her meal. A strange, icy calm descended over me. My voice, when it came out, was unrecognizable. It was flat, dead. "What the hell is this?" Russell, now standing by the bed with the sheet wrapped around his waist like a cheap toga, started babbling. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I don't know how this happened. It just happened." "It just happened?" I echoed, the words feeling alien in my mouth. "Did you trip and fall, Russell? Did you trip and fall into my sister? In our bed?" That's when Brenda sighed, a long, theatrical, put-upon sigh, and rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Carolyn," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Don't be so dramatic." Dramatic. The word hit me with the force of a physical blow. The years of being the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who was doing fine on her own, it all curdled into a white-hot rage that burned away my shock. "Get out," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. Russell continued his pathetic pleading. "Carolyn, baby, please listen. She came on to me. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. I love you." Brenda laughed. A cold, cruel sound that cut through his panicked excuses. "Oh, stop it, Russell. Don't bother. She was never good enough for you, anyway." She then looked directly at me, her eyes gleaming with a victory she had clearly wanted for a very long time. "I love him, Carolyn. And he's with me now. He's been unhappy with you for months." That was it. The snap was audible, at least inside my own head. I turned on my heel and marched to the closet. I grabbed fistfuls of Russell's expensive suits and shirts and threw them into the hallway. I grabbed Brenda's cheap, trendy clothes and threw them on top. I stalked into the living room, seized her 2 massive suitcases, and hurled them out the front door. I grabbed Russell's gym bag, his briefcase, anything that belonged to them, and added it to the pile. "You have 5 minutes," I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it was almost cleansing. "Get dressed and get out of my home before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing." They scrambled. The frantic, clumsy movements of 2 people caught and exposed. I stood by the door, my arms crossed, watching them, feeling nothing but a cold, satisfying fury. "Carolyn, please," Russell tried one last time as he stood in the doorway, a mess of shame and desperation. "We have to talk about this. There has to be a way to fix this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice like ice. I looked from his face to my sister's, and for the first time, I felt nothing for either of them. No love, no sisterly affection. Just a void. "You're both dead to me." I slammed the door in their faces, turned the deadbolt, and slid the chain into place. Then, and only then, did my body betray me. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, leaning against the door that now separated me from the ruins of my life. The tears finally came, hot and bitter. My phone buzzed incessantly on the floor, a constant stream of texts from Russell. I swiped them away, deleting the notifications without a glance. Hours later, around 9 p.m., my mother's name lit up the screen. I stared at it. A tiny, stupid part of me, a remnant of the hopeful daughter I used to be, thought, "She's calling to comfort me. She'll be on my side." That foolish hope was the last vestige of my old life. I answered. "Hello?" My voice was hoarse from crying. The voice that answered was not one of comfort. It was a shrill, piercing shriek of pure rage. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I physically recoiled, pulling the phone away from my ear. "Excuse me? How dare you?" she screamed. "How dare you throw your pregnant sister out onto the street?" She called me, hysterical, Carolyn. "She has nowhere to go." The words didn't compute. They were a jumble of nonsense. "Mom, what are you talking about? Do you have any idea what happened today?" I came home and found her in my bed with Russell. There was a pause, but not one of shock. It was a pause for her to reload. "So what?" she said, her voice dripping with dismissal. "These things happen. It's not the end of the world. You had no right to kick her out. She is your sister, for God's sake. She loves him, Carolyn. A real sister would be happy for her." "Happy?" The word came out as a strangled gasp. I felt like I was losing my mind. "You want me to be happy that my sister slept with my boyfriend in my own bed?" "Listen to me very carefully," she said, her tone shifting from hysterical to coldly instructional. "You have a good job. You have a great salary. You can easily find another apartment. Brenda and Russell are just starting out. They need a stable place. Why don't you just do the right thing and let them have your apartment? They need it more than you do right now." I was floating. The room was tilting. This couldn't be a real conversation. "Let me see if I have this straight," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You are suggesting that I pack my things, leave my home, and give it to the 2 people who betrayed me today. Is that what you're saying? Don't you use that tone with me. You have always been the selfish one, Carolyn. Always so jealous of everything Brenda has. It's time for you to grow up and think about someone other than yourself for once." A laugh bubbled up from my chest. It was a raw, broken sound. "Wow," I whispered. "Wow. I raised you better than this," she shrieked. "No," I said, a sudden, stark clarity cutting through my grief. No, you didn't. You raised Brenda to believe the world owes her everything she wants. And you raised me to believe I was the one who had to pay for it. I'm done paying. I'm done with all of you. I ended the call and, with shaking fingers, blocked her number. Then Brenda's. Then Russell's. The finality of the act was terrifying, but it was also the first breath of clean air I had taken in my entire life. The person I was before that phone call was gone forever. And I didn't miss her one bit. In the days that followed, I existed in a fog. I went to work, I came home, I stared at the walls of my now silent apartment. The news, when it came, trickled in from my cousin Heather, the one branch on the family tree that wasn't completely rotten. Brenda and Russell had, as my mother had so lovingly arranged, moved into my parents' house. They were being paraded around as the tragic, romantic couple who had found true love against all odds. It's nauseating, Heather told me over a tense coffee meeting. Aunt May is telling everyone what a perfect couple they are. And Brenda, she's posting all over Instagram. Pictures of them cooking dinner, captions about finding her soulmate. It's like she's trying to rub your face in it. Let her, I said, my voice hollow. I don't care. But I did. It felt like they were dancing on the grave of my old life. But I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing my pain. I channeled all of it, the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, into my work. I arrived early, stayed late, and poured every ounce of my energy into my projects. My boss, Diane, noticed. The Roberts presentation I had rescheduled was, by all accounts, a massive success. I was sharp, I was focused, I was unstoppable. A week after the presentation, Diane called me into her office. Carolyn, she said, a warm smile on her face. I've been so impressed with your work ethic and your performance lately. Whatever is going on in your life, you're channeling it into incredible productivity. We've decided to offer you the senior marketing strategist position. It comes with a significant salary increase and, of course, this office. She gestured to the corner office with the large window. It was a tangible reward. Proof that my life wasn't over, it was just beginning. To celebrate, my oldest friend, Arthur, insisted on dragging me out. He gathered a small group of our college friends and we went to a downtown bar. Arthur had known me since we were 18. He was my rock, the platonic male friendship that everyone assumes must be something more, but for us, it never was. He had also despised Russell from day one, calling him as deep as a puddle and twice as slick. As the night wore on and the group thinned out, it was just the two of us left at the table. You know, I said, swirling the last of the ice in my glass. You were right about him. About Russell. I should have listened to you. He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. His touch was warm and steady. I'm just sorry you had to find out the hard way, he said, his voice soft. He never deserved you, Carolyn. There was an intensity in his gaze that I'd never seen before, a depth of feeling that went beyond friendship. The line we had so carefully maintained for a decade suddenly felt blurry. We ended up back at his apartment, and what started as a comforting hug at the door turned into something else entirely. It was a desperate, hungry kiss that was about more than just passion, it was about connection, about finally being seen by someone who had been there all along. The next morning, I woke up tangled in his sheets, a wave of panic and regret washing over me. Oh, God, Arthur, I mumbled, sitting up. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have, we shouldn't have. You're my best friend. He was already awake, sitting in a chair across the room with a cup of coffee. He just smiled a gentle, knowing smile. Maybe we should have done this a long time ago, he said. I've been in love with you since we were 20, Carolyn. I was just waiting for you to see it. I thought it was a rebound. I thought it was a mistake. But it wasn't. This was different. This wasn't the flashy, superficial charm of Russell. This was the deep, quiet, unwavering support of Arthur. We decided to try, cautiously at first. We took it slow. But slow quickly turned into inseparable. It was easy. It was right. A few months later, he took me to meet his parents. I was a nervous wreck, conditioned to expect judgment and comparison. Instead, I was met with hugs and warmth. His mother, Eleanor, pulled me into the kitchen while Arthur was talking to his dad. "I have to tell you," she said, her eyes twinkling. "When Arthur told us he was finally with you, his father and I were so relieved. We've been telling him for years that he was a fool for letting you get away. You're already part of the family, dear." I almost cried right there over the potato salad. To be accepted, unconditionally, was a feeling so foreign and so wonderful, it took my breath away. This was what a family was supposed to feel like. 6 months after the day my world fell apart, Arthur took me to a beautiful lighthouse on the coast at sunset. He got down on one knee, and with a ring that he had designed himself, he asked me to be his wife. My yes was immediate, joyful, and absolute. We decided to have an engagement party a few months later at a lovely Italian restaurant. We invited all our friends, Arthur's entire, wonderful family, and a few of my own relatives, like my cousin Heather, who had stood by me. My parents and Brenda were, of course, not on the list. The party was magical. I spent the night laughing, surrounded by love. The next morning, basking in the glow of it all, my phone rang. It was my mother. In a moment of inexplicable weakness a few weeks prior, I had unblocked her number. I don't know why. Maybe a foolish, deeply buried hope that she would change. "What do you want, Mom?" I answered, my voice devoid of warmth. Her voice was trembling, but this time with a self-righteous fury. "How could you, Carolyn? How could you have an engagement party and not even tell your own mother? Your own family? We saw the pictures online." I closed my eyes. I had all the family I wanted right there with me. "We are your parents," she insisted. "And Brenda is your sister. Family is forever, Carolyn. You don't just turn your back on them because of a little disagreement." "A little disagreement?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "You mean the little disagreement where she slept with my fiancé and you told me to give them my home? That one?" "You are being cruel and vindictive," she snapped. "No," I said, the finality settling in my bones. "I'm just done." I hung up and blocked her number again. This time, I knew it would be for good. The months leading up to the wedding were a happy blur of planning. Eleanor and Arthur's sister, Joanne, took me under their wing. We tasted cakes, we looked at venues, we picked out flowers. They filled the gaping hole my own mother and sister had left. One evening, Arthur and I were sitting on the couch, laptops open, trying to decide between Hawaii and Italy for our honeymoon, when my phone rang. It was an unlisted number. A sense of dread washed over me as I answered. "Carolyn?" It was my mother. Her voice was tight, strained, and filled with a terrifying urgency. "You need to come to the house. Right now. It's an emergency. It's a matter of life and death." My blood ran cold. My mind instantly jumped to the worst possible conclusions. Dad had a heart attack. Mom has cancer. There's been a car accident. The thought of a funeral, of facing that grief, was terrifying. Despite the pain they'd caused, the idea of them being gone, it was too much. "Is Dad okay? Are you sick? What happened?" "Just come," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Please, just get here as soon as you can." I hung up, my heart pounding. I told Arthur what happened, and he offered to come with me, but I told him I needed to go alone. The 30-minute drive was the longest of my life. I was preparing myself for the worst, bracing for news that would change everything. I pulled into the familiar driveway and ran to the door. My mother opened it before I could even knock. her face was grim. "What is it?" I asked, rushing past her into the house. "Where's Dad?" She led me into the living room. And there, sitting in his usual armchair, was my father, looking perfectly healthy. And on the couch, her face tear-streaked and puffy, was Brenda. The relief that no one was dying was so overwhelming, it almost made me dizzy. It was quickly followed by a hot, simmering rage. This was a trick. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice like ice. My mother wrung her hands. "Your sister needs you, Carolyn." Brenda looked up at me, her lower lip trembling. "Russell left me," she whimpered. I stared at her, my face a blank mask. This was their life or death emergency. A breakup. And? "There's more," my mother said quietly. She placed a hand on Brenda's visibly rounded stomach. "She's pregnant." The room was silent for a long moment as I processed this. Russell had left her, and she was pregnant. I felt a flicker of something, maybe pity, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of them together in my bed. "He moved to Arizona," my dad finally spoke up, his voice heavy. "He's refusing to have anything to do with her or the baby. He's not going to provide any support." He was looking at me as he said this, a strange, expectant look in his eyes. I finally shrugged. A cold, indifferent gesture. "That's unfortunate. But I have to ask again, what does any of this have to do with me?" My mother and father exchanged a look. It was a silent, practiced conversation I had witnessed my entire life. Then, my mother turned back to me, her face a mask of solemn sincerity. "Well, Carolyn," she said, her voice dripping with faux reasonableness. "In a way, this is partly your fault. I thought I had reached the absolute limit of their insanity, but I was wrong. I was so wrong." I actually laughed. A short, sharp, incredulous bark of a laugh. "My fault? Are you out of your mind? How, in any version of reality, is this my fault?" "You knew Russell better than anyone," my mother explained, as if speaking to a simple child. "You dated him for 2 years. You should have warned your sister about what kind of man he was, that he wasn't reliable. If you had, she never would have gotten into this mess." I just stared at her. The sheer, galaxy-level audacity of it left me breathless. "So, let me recap," I said slowly, enunciating every word. "My sister chooses to sleep with my fiancé. You defend her. Then, when he turns out to be exactly the kind of scumbag who would do that, it's my fault because I didn't give her a character reference for the man she was actively stealing from me?" "This isn't the time for holding grudges," my father interjected sternly. "This is about family. This is about your future niece or nephew. Brenda needs help." I looked at Brenda, who was now openly weeping into a tissue, playing the part of the tragic single mother to the hilt. "What kind of help are you talking about?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My mother stepped forward. "Well, for starters, she'll need financial support. She can't work in her condition. There will be doctor's visits, hospital bills, supplies for the baby. And of course, we need to think about a college fund." "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it landed in the room with the force of a slamming door. "What do you mean, no?" my mother sputtered. "I mean no. I will not be giving Brenda a single cent. Her choices, her pregnancy, and her baby are not my responsibility." I turned and walked toward the door. "How can you be so heartless?" my mother shrieked after me. "This is your family." "No," I said, pausing with my hand on the doorknob. "You stopped being my family a long time ago." I thought that was the end of it. I thought I had made myself perfectly, unequivocally clear. I was wrong. A week later, on a Saturday morning, I was sitting with Arthur, enjoying a rare, peaceful moment with coffee and the newspaper, when my phone buzzed with a new email. It was from my mother. The subject line read, "For the baby." With a sense of profound dread, I opened it. The body of the email was short and chillingly polite. The attachment was a PDF file. Its title, Baby Expenses. My hand was shaking as I opened the document. It was a spreadsheet. A meticulously organized, itemized list of every conceivable cost associated with having a child. Prenatal vitamins, $150 per month. Maternity clothes, designer, apparently $1,200. Childbirth classes, $300. Top-rated obstetrician visits, $250 per visit. Hospital delivery, private suite, $15,000. Nursery furniture from a boutique, $3,000. Organic cotton baby clothes, $500. Stroller, car seat, high chair, top of the line, $1,500. Diapers for a year, $1,200. Organic formula for a year, $1,800. The list went on, and on, and on. The grand total at the bottom of the page was $22,450. And beneath the total was a single, typed sentence: "As this situation is ultimately your responsibility, we expect you to cover these initial expenses. Please arrange for payment at your earliest convenience." I stared at that number. Over $22,000. For a baby that resulted from the worst betrayal of my life. I felt 1,000 emotions at once, but mostly, I just felt numb. It was so ridiculous, it was almost funny. Pause. If you're still listening to my story up to this point, could you do me a huge favor and like this video, and then comment the number 1 down below? It lets me know that you're here with me on this journey, and your support truly means the world to me. It gives me the strength to keep going. So please, just take a second to comment 1, and let me tell you what I did next. Arthur, who had been reading over my shoulder, just shook his head in disbelief. "They're not just delusional," he said quietly. "They're certifiably insane." My first instinct was to just delete it, to block them again and pretend it never happened. But this was a declaration of war. They had crossed a line from manipulation into outright extortion. And I was done being their victim. "No," I said to Arthur, a new resolve hardening inside me. "I'm not going to ignore this. I'm going to answer it." I opened a reply, my fingers flying across the keyboard. "Mom, I am in receipt of your invoice. I will not be paying it. I will not be paying any expenses related to Brenda's pregnancy or her child. Her situation is the direct and sole result of her own choices. Neither I nor my fiancé will provide any financial support, now or ever. This is the last time I will communicate with you on this or any other matter. Any further attempts to contact me or my fiancé will be considered harassment, and we will consult a lawyer. Carolyn." I hit send without a moment's hesitation. Then, I permanently blocked their email addresses, their phone numbers, and every other possible avenue of contact. I felt a profound sense of finality. It was truly, finally, done. Or so I thought. When they realized they could no longer reach me directly, they weaponized the rest of my family. The smear campaign began. My phone started ringing with calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My cousin Heather called first. "Carolyn, what is going on? Your mom called me, sobbing, saying you've abandoned your pregnant sister in her time of need all because you're jealous she found true love with Russell." Then I ran into an old family friend, Mrs. Gable, at the grocery store. She saw me, gave me a look of pure disgust, and turned her cart around, wheeling away down another aisle as if I were contagious. My parents were painting me as a cold, cruel monster, and because they were the parents, people were believing them. I came home that night and just broke down in Arthur's arms. "I can't take it anymore," I cried. "They're poisoning everyone against me. They're making me out to be this horrible person." Arthur held me for a long moment, then he looked me straight in the eyes. Then stop letting them tell your story, he said, his voice firm. You have the truth on your side. You have the receipts. Literally. It's time you set the record straight. He was right. I was done being silent. I spent the next hour typing. I logged onto social media, and I wrote it all out. Everything. I started with Brenda moving in, the betrayal, the lies. I wrote about my mother's phone call, her demand that I give them my apartment. And then, for the grand finale, I wrote about the email. And I attached the screenshots. The entire, itemized, $22,450 bill for everyone to see. I was terrified, my hand shaking as I hovered over the post button. But I did it. The explosion was instantaneous. My phone began to buzz and ping so much I had to put it on silent. The shockwave rippled through my friends and family. People who had only heard my parents' twisted version were suddenly confronted with the ugly, documented truth. The apologies started rolling in. My Aunt Susan called, mortified. Carolyn, I am so sorry. I should have known better than to believe it. To send you that bill, it's monstrous. For the first time, the narrative was mine. The truth was out. But my family's final act was yet to come. About 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, there was a loud, pounding knock on our front door. Not a polite knock. An angry, demanding one. I looked through the peephole. My stomach dropped. It was my mother, my father, and Brenda, who was now so pregnant she looked like she was about to pop. I'll get rid of them, Arthur said, his jaw set. No, I said, a strange calm settling over me. I need to do this. I need to end this. I opened the door. My mother started screaming before I even had a chance to speak. How dare you, she shrieked, her face purple with rage. How dare you air our family's dirty laundry in public? You have humiliated us. I just stood there and let her vent, her words washing over me. They had no power anymore. Dad stood behind her, nodding along. Brenda stood to the side, one hand resting protectively on her belly, her eyes downcast in a perfect imitation of a wronged victim. When my mother finally paused to take a breath, I spoke, my voice even. Are you done? We're not leaving until you delete that post and agree to help your sister, my father declared. I just shook my head and started to close the door. That's not going to happen. My mother lunged forward to stop the door. You selfish, ungrateful child. That's when Arthur stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air with absolute authority. Stop, he said. You have said enough. I have stood by and watched you bully and manipulate this incredible woman for the last time. Bully her? My dad scoffed. We're her parents. Parents? Arthur shot back, his eyes flashing. Parents don't defend betrayal. Parents don't send their child a bill for their siblings' mistakes. That's not parenting, that's abuse. And it's over. It's time for you to leave. If you are not off this property in 60 seconds, I will call the police and have you removed for harassment. I am a lawyer. I suggest you don't test me. My mother gasped, clutching her chest in a theatrical display of shock. But for the first time, they looked scared. They saw that their power was gone. They left, but not before my mother hurled one last, pathetic threat over her shoulder. This isn't over, Carolyn. You'll regret this. 3 months later, I stood in a beautiful white dress, looking out over a sparkling lake, about to marry the love of my life. The day was perfect, filled with sunshine and laughter. Arthur, ever my protector, had hired 2 discreet security guards for the event. It turned out to be a wise decision. Midway through the reception, we were informed that 3 uninvited guests had arrived. My parents and Brenda, holding a handwritten sign, had tried to enter the venue to make a scene. They were calmly and firmly escorted off the property before they ever got past the gate. Later, as I was dancing with my new husband, his sister Joanne came up and gave me a hug. She gestured around at the joyful crowd. "This is your family, Carolyn," she said softly. "The real one." And looking at all the smiling faces of the people who truly loved and supported me, I knew she was right. I heard, months later, through Heather, that Brenda had a baby boy. My parents were raising him, complaining constantly about the financial burden and their cruel, heartless daughter who had turned her back on them. But the words were just echoes from a distant shore. They couldn't touch me anymore. I had survived their storm. I had walked through the fire of their making and come out the other side, not burned, but forged into someone stronger. I had built a life of my own, a family of my own, and a happiness they could never comprehend and certainly never take away. And that, I can tell you, is the best revenge of all. Thank you so much for listening to my whole story. If you've ever felt trapped or hurt by a family situation, I hope my story gives you a little bit of hope. Please feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below. Your stories matter. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You're not alone.